G'day! Today for December I'm playing a game called Barren Planet. This was made by Cyningstan earlier this year, about April. It's a turn-based strategy game, much in the vein of something like Advanced Wars or Panzer General on the PC, and it's really kind of cool, so let's take a quick look at Barren Planet.
Much like Cyningstan's older games, Barren Planet has CGI graphics and PC speaker sound. The graphics in particular being excellent for CGI, living up to the standards that Cyningstan had set in his previous games. The control scheme is also very similar to previous games, using the arrow keys and a fire button to select items from a menu, or to move your cursor around the screen and select something on screen. So from a technical aspect, Barren Planet is very much like previous games, such as Team Droid. It is of course very different because Barren Planet is a strategy game. Like I said earlier, very much like Advanced Wars. When you first start a game, you choose which campaign you want to play and which side you want to play as. There are two sides, Nuvatech and Avis Corp. Each of them seem to have access to the same types of units, but you'll end up with different starting conditions for each mission in the campaign. Each mission starts with a briefing, which mostly amount to either defending yourself from the enemy or destroying them. You'll also get to see the starting resources and units you get to use to complete the task. After you've read the briefing, the game begins. Each player takes turns to move their units. You have a cursor on the battlefield that you can use to select which unit you wish to move. If you move the cursor to an empty space and select the first menu option, generally you'll move that unit to that space. If you move the cursor over an enemy unit and select the first option, you'll generally get something like attack that unit. Only if it's within range though. When you select a unit, you'll get information about it on the right hand side of the screen. The first item is health, and that basically tells you how many hit points your unit has. The second is combat strength. That tells you what the maximum hit point damage that unit can do. The third one is targeting distance. That one indicates how far away you can be from a target when you can shoot it. Some of the later units you'll encounter can shoot from 3 or 4 tiles away. The fourth stat is armor. That is the maximum amount of damage reduction from anything else attacking this unit. The last stat is the number of movement points that you have available to this unit for movement. Some of the terrain tiles can use more than one movement point, but essentially this should be the number of tiles that you're able to move. You'll also need one of these points if you wish to enter combat, which will end a unit's turn. The terrain on which your unit stands has an effect on your unit in a few different ways. Some have defensive bonuses that increase your armor, some will cost additional movement points to move through, and others will be completely impassable, depending on which unit you have selected. If you want to find out what effect terrain has on a unit, select a unit and then go to an empty terrain space and select that terrain space, and the stats on the right hand side will indicate what that terrain does for the unit you have selected. In the first campaign you'll also occasionally have a static mining base. This obviously can't move anywhere, but it can build you new units or repair old ones for half the cost. It can also attack enemy units if they get close enough. The mining base is also the source of new resource units, which are important if you want to repair or build anything new, so defending your mining base is of the utmost importance. It's also a good first target to destroy if the opposition has one. The first campaign starts out fairly gently, which employs mostly the simpler units such as the combat droids and the hover tanks, which don't require too much thought to combat against. As the missions progress, tougher units are introduced that cost more resources but are also more difficult to destroy. This tends to stretch the resources you have, but also makes the game last longer as it takes more thought and effort to achieve your goals. As the odds are gradually stacked against you, the units you have become more valuable, but also more likely to become destroyed. So your mining base becomes even more valuable to repair units, but also to build replacements when necessary. There were a few strategies that I found quite useful. The first one is concentrated firepower. Most of the units in this game take quite a bit of a beating to destroy them, so it can be quite useful to destroy them quicker by concentrating your fire. Surrounding an enemy unit with yours can also limit its mobility, thus making it less useful. It's also a good idea to take advantage of the local terrain, such as using choke points to force enemy units to attack one at a time. I've played most of the first campaign so far and found it to be pretty enjoyable. I've not had anything so difficult I couldn't get past it, so I think the learning curve is just right.
You can tell that Cyningstan has put a lot of effort into this game. He's even made a new campaign for it called the Polar Expedition. Let's take a look at that one.
The second campaign really highlights how capable the Barren Planet engine really is. It contains its own terrain set as well as unit set and looks completely different from the first campaign. There is a much greater focus on constructing and building your own armies with the use of these mobile construction stations, and you also can collect more resources because you can build mining stations on crystal outcrops. These are quite expensive and valuable, so you don't want to lose them, but it's certainly quite different from the first campaign. Some of the more interesting missions make good use of terrain to make it difficult to get at your goals, and others include a nice base that you start out with defences and mining stations already built. So I think in many ways the Polar Expedition campaign has more potential for interesting battles between human players.
I've really enjoyed Barren Planet. It's easy to learn, but it's got a bit of depth, so there is a little bit of challenge if you're looking for that. The AI was a little bit weak, so I think if you turn it up to hard, you might find that the most challenging state of play, unless of course you use one of its other features, which is to play against humans. You can either do that via hot seat or via play by email. Unfortunately, I haven't got anyone to do either of those things with, so I couldn't try out those features. Although I suppose I could have played by myself. But that wouldn't have been anywhere near as interesting as playing against someone else. Anyhow, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Why did he not want to play the game with us?
I know what you mean. We could have helped out with this one. At least you get to speak in some videos.
At least you're in the background most of the time. I only get to be here once a year. I nearly fell off, and everyone can see my ass.
No wonder he didn't ask with you two whiny pricks.
You're one to talk, you're covered in them.
Shut up you two, you're as bad as each other.